Hey, this is Nicky G, and welcome to Better Commander. Today we're talking about Raggadragga, the double bagga, Goreguts boss. Hey, before I get into excruciating detail about the lore nuances in the Forgotten Realms, let's take a minute to subscribe to my channel. I want to tell you about budget decks, and this is a budget deck. Double Masters 2's coming out, and it's going to cost an entire lung and 3/4 of a kidney per booster pack. So why not build a synergistic commander deck for $70 or so? Take the plunge with me, my sweet one. Okay, this time I actually did do a little lore dive on this fella. I guess he's a wereboar that's also a hill giant, which kind of makes sense with his abilities. All I really know is that he's a sweet pig buddy that takes my favorite card type and makes them bigger. Mana dorks are the best, and my favorite card from MH2 is Ornithopter of Paradise. So what are the other 98 cards? Raggadragga, Goreguts boss. This sounds like a sound effect from a 90s nu metal band. It's 2, a red and a green for a legendary creature, a human boar. It's a 4/4. Each creature you control with a mana ability gets +2/+2. Whenever a creature you control with a mana ability attacks, untap it. Whenever you cast a spell, if at least 7 mana was spent to cast it, untap target creature. It gets +7/+7 and gains trample until the end of turn. Look at this awesome art. This giant muscly wereboar is fist bumping you, and he's wielding a sweet metal hammer. So this is a ton of text, so let's break it down. First, he likes mana dorks. He makes them bigger. It's got some incidental value there. That may save them from damage-based effects that happen all the time in Commander. Secondly, if you attack with a mana dork, it gets untapped. So if the board is clear to attack into, you can cast some sweet spells second main phase. But the third ability wants you spending 7 mana or more for spells in your first main phase, or at least at instant speed before combat, so you can swing in with a much bigger creature with trample. Those abilities solve the ramp issue, use your mana dorks, and gives us a clear strategy to build into. You want to rapidly ramp to 7 mana and cast impactful fatties. So first off, let's talk about some haste enablers. Fires of Yavimaya can act as a one-time pump spell. Rhythm of the Wild is 1 red and a green for an enchantment. Creature spells you control can't be countered. Non-token creatures you control have Riot. They enter the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste. This synergizes great with our commander and some other cards in our deck. So spoiler alert, that's Rishkar. Mark of Fury is 1 red mana for an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature has haste. At the beginning of the end step, you may return Mark of Fury to its owner's hand. This is a criminally underplayed haste enabler. It's 23 cents and belongs in any budget red deck that you're going to make. Alright, so the first thing we're going to need after our haste enablers is mana dorks. So this is a budget deck, so you want a lot of 1-drops. You got Llanowar Elves. This is the only Arda except for Llanowar Elves. You have Elvish Mystic, Birds of Paradise if you have the budget. There's nothing that strikes fear in the hearts of your enemies more than Quirion Elves. It's 1 green mana for a 1/1 that you can tap to add a green mana. Can you imagine these guys lurking through your backyard, searching for anything they could find, ready to stab you up with those terrible looking knives? Moving from one terrifying art to another, Quirion Elves. These are going to be our 2-drops. Quirion Elves is 1 and a green mana. So as it enters the battlefield, choose the color. You're probably going to want to choose red, so you can tap to add a mana of the chosen color. But look at these guys, man. I mean, he's hanging out in the woods with this hot lady. They got bows and arrows. They're up to no good. They're a bunch of scoundrels. So you also have cards like Quirion Explorer, you got Leafkin Druid, you got my beloved Ornithopter of Paradise. There's about 10 in this deck, and I want to highlight a couple more. What about Leafkin Druid? This guy will quickly be tapping for 2 mana. Same as Leafkin Druid. Leafkin Druid comes online when you control a creature with power 4 or greater, which our commander is a creature with power 4 or greater, so take that. Alright, while we're on the subject of 2-drops, let's talk some removal. I just wanted to highlight Hull Breach real quick. This is sorcery speed, so there's that, but there isn't a game I can think of that I didn't cripple an opponent with it for 2 mana. Basically, you're taking out an artifact, an enchantment, or an artifact and an enchantment for 2 mana. So for 3-drops, we have Rishkar, Pima Renegade, Llanowar Visionary, and Marwyn the Nurturer. Marwyn immediately taps for 3 mana with our commander on the battlefield, and Rishkar synergizes great with Rhythm of the Wild. Marwyn can get out of hand if you cast multiple 7-drop spells. So you cast a 7-drop, target her for the +7/+7, so then she can tap for her power, so she's tapping for 10 mana. You cast another 7-drop, untap her, make her a 17/17. So basically you just kind of get out of hand with that. Rinse and repeat. Just make sure you rinse. That's the most important part of washing your hands. Okay? Alright, now we're getting into the awkward part of the mana curve, where we aren't capitalizing on Raggadragga's second ability, but we need to cast spells. So I centered this area on card draw. So Rishkar's expertise is 4 green for a sorcery, draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. You may cast a spell with mana values 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. This is a fantastic card in any green deck, and it's very cheap right now. Sereth, the Viper's Fang, 2 green for a legendary creature. It's a human warlock, 3/4. Other tapped creatures you control have Death Touch. Other untapped creatures you control have Hexproof. And it has 1 in tap, untap another target creature or land you control. This plays very nicely with our commander's untap ability and can give us a little boost of mana if we untap Marwyn or another creature that taps for 2 or more. Also, Death Touch attacking into your opponent's creatures is going to give them some very difficult choices. Beast Whisper, a classic commander card, 2 green for a creature elf druid. It's a 2/3. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. This is a creature based deck and this goes great in this deck. Greater Good is 2 green for an enchantment. Sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power, then discard 3 cards. When we pump our little buddies, we can draw a significant amount of cards. We can also activate this at instant speed in response to some combat trick or a board wipe. Anything with power 3 or greater is a deal that'll help us filter our cards. Elemental Bond is 2 green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So if Llanowar Elves resolves and our commander is on the battlefield, Raggadragga's first ability is a static buff that applies as the elves enter the battlefield, and this will trigger Elemental Bond. This turns our mana dorks into card draw. Alright, we gotta win at some point, so Overwhelming Stampede is 3 green for a sorcery. Until the end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. These overrun type effects are relatively cheap money-wise and are great to put in go-wide decks. Return of the Wildspeaker is 4 green for an instant. Choose 1. Draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control, or non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until the end of turn. This is another banger, and with very few humans in this deck, it can be a killing blow to a weakened opponent. Plus, check that art out, man. Garruk is feeling it. Sylvan Awakening is 2 green for a sorcery. Until your next turn, all lands you control become 2/2 elemental creatures with reach, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. So these lands would be creatures with a mana ability. So they also get the static buff from Raggadragga. Ruric Thar, the Unbound, 4 red and a green for a legendary creature Ogre Warrior. It's a 6/6 with vigilance and reach. Ruric Thar, the Unbound, attacks each combat if able. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Ruric Thar deals 6 damage to that player. This is a great target for the +7/+7 because it has vigilance and reach. Hammer into the opponent and leave them untapped for the crackback. Alright, now we get into the fun part of the curve. So the curve for this deck kind of looks like a big high mound around the 2s and 3s, and then it goes down, and then around 7 it curves back up. So Gruul Rage Beast is 5 red and a green for a creature. It's a beast, 6/6. Whenever Gruul Rage Beast or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature fights another target creature an opponent controls. Fighting is going to be a way we can clear troublesome utility creatures and our opponent's commanders and blockers. Molten Primordial is 5 red for a creature. It's an avatar, 6/4 with haste. Molten Primordial enters the battlefield for each opponent. Gain control of up to 1 target creature that player controls until the end of turn. Untap those creatures. They gain haste until the end of turn. This guy is a beast and can end games out of nowhere. Foe Razor Region. Alright, this is a budget deck, so I'm going to use some suboptimal creatures, alright? It's 5 green for a dragon, 5/5 with flying. When Foe Razor Regent enters the battlefield, you may have it fight another target creature you don't control. Whenever a creature you control fights, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it at the beginning of the next end step. It's another kind of decent fighter that can take out our opponent's beefy commanders. Dragon Mage. This is one of my favorite cards in all of Magic. It's 5 red for a creature. It's a dragon wizard, 5/5 with flying. Whenever Dragon Mage deals combat damage to a player, each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. So this is huge, it's strong, it breathes fire, and it wheels you if you can hit an opponent with no flyers. This is another underrated commander card, especially if you can give it haste. I think in a deck like this you should have about 13 to 15 giant creatures and curve toppers. Since it's a budget deck, we can pick and choose from a variety of big fatties that cost a few cents up to $1. The point is that you want creatures that do something when they enter the battlefield, either destroying a permanent like Woodfall Primus and Terastodon, or fighting like we were talking about before, or drawing cards like Regal Force. Regal Force is 4 green, green, green for a creature elemental. When Regal Force enters the battlefield, draw a card for each green creature you control. So this guy is a 5/5. It's just a big fatty that rarely moves and it stands still in its clearing or whatever. Or you want the creature dealing damage for removal, like Bogardan Hellkite. So this thing's 6 red red for a creature dragon. It's a 5/5 with flash and flying. When Bogardan Hellkite enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. Guess what, dude? I ain't buying a whole nother copy of Craterhoof Behemoth. That's like half the budget for this deck. So we need some other cool pigs to help us win a game. How about Decimator of the Provinces? This guy is rocking and rolling in a field somewhere. It costs 10 generic mana for a creature. Eldrazi Boar. It's a 7/7 with trample and haste. So it has this emerge cost, so you can sacrifice a creature and it helps pay the emerge cost reduced by that creature's mana value. When you cast this spell, creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until the end of turn. This is like a budget Craterhoof Behemoth, plus it's a pig and your commander's a pig, so whatever. The tension in a deck like this is between threats and mana dorks and how easily you can flow between the two. You're going to get board wipes, so you need to have a full grip to build back up to that explosive moment when you swing for 25 or 30 damage into your most threatening opponent. So check out the list, goldfish it a little bit. You can get the whole thing on TCG Player for about 70 bucks. It's a fun, easily upgradable beatdown commander. This would be a great deck to give a friend who's new to Commander or new to Magic in general. So I want to thank you guys once again for watching. Enjoy your stupid life out there. And this is going to be Nicky G from Better Commander, signing off.